everyone. Welcome to another KE Report webinar. This webinar is produced in conjunction with Focus Communications. I'm your host, Corey Fleck, also your host over at the KE Report website, where you can follow along with daily market commentary, as well as company-specific updates, much along the lines of the company I am featuring today, FireFox Gold, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol FFOX, on the OTCQB under the symbol FFOXF, and on the Frankfurt Exchange under the symbol FIY. I am chatting with the chairman and co-founder, Patrick Highsmith. Patrick is going to be walking us through this presentation, outlining the company's focus in Finland, in the well-known Lapland Greenstone belt that has, I think, come on a lot more investors' radars recently, although it's not necessarily a new area. There are majors working in the area and some other exploration companies. FireFox holds a portfolio of projects. Now, you do all have the ability to ask questions live through this event. Please use the Q&A function or the chat feature. I will monitor those questions throughout this webinar and interject them throughout Patrick's presentation, as well as spend a little bit of time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. Without further ado, Patrick, thank you very much for putting together this presentation. Thank you for taking time to share the FireFox Gold story. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Corey, and welcome, everyone. Glad to see there's some fearsome, tenacious folks out there who actually care about gold exploration in this market. We're in a new world. You know, as Joe Foster at Van Eck said a couple of weeks ago, 35 years of watching the gold sector, this has never happened before, what's happening with gold price, and yet the equities are still taking a beating. And exploration companies have a tough life. But hey, great times at FireFox. We ended last year with a great new cornerstone investor in the form of Agnico Eagle Mines joining. And that really helped us out quite a bit in sort of showing what we've got, Corey, a portfolio of assets that major companies like Agnico obviously care about. So going to take you through the gold discovery story at FireFox. And we are looking forward to a good year and filling the demand that this gold price is obviously telling us is out there for gold. So I am a geologist, and being technical, I'm going to say some forward-looking things, and by all means, you should apprise yourself of the cautionary language here and on our website. I'll disclose some technical information as well. So be sure and check out that additional cautionary language and all the disclaimers in our annual reporting and our continuous disclosures as well. So we are featuring, as you said, Corey, the central Lapland Greenstone belt in Lapland, Finland. And, you know, FireFox, for such a small company, we really are a major player there. We're a big tenement holder. We've been there. We founded the company in 2017, and our management team is really there. Janice Craig, our CFO, I think is probably attending this call. She's in Vancouver. I'm here in the U.S., in Nashville, Tennessee. Other than that, everyone is in Finland. Our CEO, our exploration manager, whom you see here, he built the house 5 minutes from the core shed in the Arctic of Finland. So everybody's committed. We got a great team with a lot of cumulative exploration and business experience. We've got a discovery. I'm going to take you through it, and I'm not going to mince words. The Mustajärvi project is a gold discovery. It's going to be mined by someone. And we're going to take you through what we've done there with the high-grade zones we found there. But we've got a portfolio of a lot of other projects that we control 100% across this belt, right next to major discoveries and in hotbeds of activity. And then, as I mentioned, we closed out last year with an important strategic investment from Agnico Eagle Mines. They are now a major shareholder, and they've also optioned one of our big properties on which they are earning in. So there's a lot of work going on. And we're going to
leave it here for 1 second, just because this is a good summary of the company, where I think clearly Mustajärvi, that's a key catalyst for the company. It's what you're exploring yourself, but then all this other land that you hold and that investment by Agnico, as well as, I believe, an option agreement on a project. How do you go about getting value, driving shareholder value from these projects outside of Mustajärvi?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a struggle we always have, Corey, and that's why the board came to the decision to do that deal with Agnico. We have such a portfolio that, quite frankly, with that many square kilometers, you just cannot raise sufficient capital as a junior company to explore it all. And yet, we are not a prospect generator. We own these properties. We're going to own these discoveries. We own the Mustajärvi discovery. So what I think the theme that runs through this, Corey, for value creation is grade and our ability to execute in Finland. As you'll see, high grade rears its head on every one of our properties. And unlike, say, West Africa, similar rocks, and every prospect in West Africa sort of has 2 grams gold on it. Every prospect I see here in this part of Finland has 5 grams gold or better on it. So I think grade, I think a clarity of the trajectory to discovery and it being mined. You know, Europe's biggest gold mine is in Finland, and the operator of Europe's biggest gold mine is a 11% shareholder of FireFox. And so there's a pipeline there for what we do, and there's other attentive parties. So it's, for me, about executing, minimizing overhead, Corey. We're known as a company that puts what we raise into the ground, and that's what being a discoverer of gold is all about, especially in a rising gold price environment.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's the key, right? This rising gold price environment where the juniors haven't really benefited from this bounce and this breakout in gold. It all filters down, but everyone's wondering just how long that filter down is going to take.
Yeah, a little slower than we'd like, I'm afraid. And, you know, we don't mind making money for investors. That buying low is part of the formula, Corey. Buy low and sell high. So unfortunately, we've got to sell some stock at lower prices than we'd like every day on a market like this. So, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. You take it away there, Patrick.
Well, there's more of the tape, the sort of the depressing side of the tape, in the sense that we are a pre-discovery valuation. We're a very inexpensive junior company, and look at that scale bar here. I mean, unfortunately, we have to put our market cap up against the likes of Rupert, as you can see here. But you know, several years ago, like 6-7 years ago, Rupert's market cap would have been down here similar to FireFox. But of course, this is what happens when you make a multi-million ounce discovery. Orion has certainly been up and down over the last few years, but you can see where we sit. But these 4 juniors, and really S2 Resources out of Australia, has sort of exited the belt, and they've optioned some ground, and they've also transacted with a group called Outback Goldfields that'll be coming in there as another exploration junior. But this is sort of it. These 4 juniors and 2 majors, B2 Gold and Agnico, really control the belt. And so we don't mind being in this pre-discovery valuation as long as we're out there generating results, which is our plan. On the right there, you see our share cap. I mean, if you look at who owns our shares, again, for a tiny company, we've got, of course, Crescat Capital is our largest shareholder. Agnico comes in at about 11% on an issued and outstanding basis. And then Florian Siegfried at SSI Asset Management in Zurich, very significant shareholder. Finland's only gold and silver fund, the Zenito Gold and Silver Fund, also a sizable shareholder. So again, tick some boxes there. Institutional shareholders, a lot of shares held at the board level by management and directors. So we've got those sort of key ingredients you want, even though we're, of course, a very small exploration company, currently speaking. So team. I won't spend a lot of time here. Encourage you to look up the bios, but what you'll see here is a huge amount of experience, a couple of 3 independent directors now. Joe Mullen, former banker, now CEO of junior companies and successful transactor of companies, has been with us since our founding. Andor Lips has been both on the operating side and the buy side, having been an analyst for Commodity Discovery Fund. And then we just added Rob McNaughton to give us some of that legal expertise that every good junior company needs on the board. And Rob's been with us through his firm, BLG, since before our founding as well. So advisors, look at the people we've got advising us. Alex Davidson, former exec VP of Barrick, a member of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Rich Goldfarb, one of the most published and leading experts on orogenic gold in the world, is a founding shareholder with us. And that leaves the management up top with Carl, based in Finland, a non-technical, more of an economist bent to his training, versus me, a technical director and chairman of the company. And then Mikko Neninen, our exploration manager, formerly with Agnico Eagle, has been with FireFox since our start. And then Janice Craig, our CFO, working out of Vancouver. So lean and mean, focused on delivery, and a lot of senior people to consult with and help us get things done. And that's what we've been doing with FireFox since we started. It's been very team oriented. So let's just look at the Central Lapland Greenstone Belt, which is what this slide does for you. So we're about 100 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle here, and yet here's the city of Kittilä International Airport, the Levi Ski Hill where the World Cup kicks off just north of that. Down in the lower right is Sodankylä, where we have our field office, where Orion and Rupert have their field offices. Rio Tinto, Anglo-American operate out of this part of the country. And then up here at the north end of the slide is Agnico's gold mine, the Kittilä gold mine. Notice paved highways crisscrossing this part of the world. We don't need helicopters to access our properties. There's some swamps, low-lying areas like where Ikkari was discovered, but great access by and large to be especially north of the Arctic Circle. As far as the competitors and our peers in the region, we've color-coded the land positions here. And of course, Agnico in the north on the red is their ground around their mine primarily. Rupert is shown in this dark green. The Ikkari discovery is here. And their land position shown as green there. In blue is Orion Resources. You see here and here. And then this sort of orange color has been the joint venture between B2 and Orion, which has been announced will be transacted to Rupert unless Orion comes up with another scenario for that. So this may be turning green, but as of now, it's held in B2's name as part of an earn-in joint venture. And then the pinks are the former S2 resources, which are being, many of which have been optioned and are being transacted to Outback gold fields. The gold properties are FireFox's, and you can see where we sit. Other than Mustajärvi, kind of in the center of the slide, really our smallest property, we have these sizable properties right next to Rupert, north of the Ikkari discovery. Big property down here called Jeesiö, kind of intertwined with Orion's work and their option with Kinross right here. And then the huge Kolho property, which has now been optioned to Agnico Eagle here in the upper right. So if it's not colored, one of those colors, if it's more that light green, then frankly, it's either a municipality or a swamp or a protected area, or it's not prospective for gold because the belt is pretty well pegged up. And that means most of that land is held by the exploration companies you see here that really have locked up this greenstone belt pretty tight. So, of course, we have about 9 million ounces of production plus resources and reserves up at the Kittilä mine, largest gold mine in Europe. And then here at Ikkari, the current indicated resources in the open pitable part of the project are about 4.1 million ounces, 60 million tons at 2 grams, great metallurgy, and their PEA at much lower gold prices, I might add, was a very attractive 1.6 billion US on an after-tax basis, net present value. So hot area of exploration here. This is where our Mustajärvi discovery is happening, which we'll take you through. And there's also a lot of work going on down here. And then, of course, Agco will be exploring here on the Kolho property. So that's kind of the lay of the land in Finland. The infrastructure is just, quite frankly, some of the best you're going to see, particularly at a northern latitude like this. Great place to work.
Patrick, this slide answers a couple questions then. One was, who holds the surrounding land around Mustajärvi? It's that JV partnership right there. That does sound like it's changing. Also, would you entertain any more JVs for your secondary projects?
It's a good point. We won't have time to talk much about some of these other properties here. We'll just briefly show them later. But yeah, you know, we're not a prospect generator, as I said, Corey. We're out doing original work, making our discoveries for our shareholders. However, it clearly makes sense with this much land to entertain options if they're accretive to the company. And we have had a lot of inquiries, and we continue to field those. So yes, we wouldn't rule out a joint venture, an earn-in arrangement, but it will likely be on a non-core asset and not here in the heart of all this activity happening here or around Mustajärvi.
What about that project on the west over here? I don't even see that one labeled. Is that, it's part of FireFox, correct?
It is, yeah, and you'll see it on another slide. It's called Naula, and very attractive. It's near the major fault here, which I failed to mention. This black line is called the Serka Shear Zone. It's the through-going fault that all these greenstone belts have, Corey. If we were up in Timmins, we'd be talking about the Porcupine Dester. And it is a major structure along which a lot of the gold discoveries were initially made, including a couple here. And you can see Nala is nearby one of those. But that's a good example. It's in the early days of work, granted to us just in a permit status or in an exploration permit status just last year. And it has a lot of interesting targets on it. And we have entertained those discussions, but we've also done some of our own work there, Corey. So yes is the answer. We would consider it, and that is part of our daily business, is to chat about such things.
Okay. So you are building up targets at all these other projects, then it sounds like. You're doing work on them.
We just have to prioritize. We have a team of 3 full-time geologists and a couple of consultants. And so we're always working even through all seasons of the year. But clearly we're focusing where we've been drilling gold and where there's a hotbed of activity. But yet we've done a little bit of work here and a little bit of work here, for instance, on these less core properties.
Yeah, understandably so. There's a lot going on in this area. That's why I think investors have turned their attention to it. So you're focusing where the work is happening.
Yeah, indeed. And as to the work, I mean, last year was a tough year in the markets, as we all know. But man, if it wasn't for that, it would have been a great year for us. We started off with some important drill hole intercepts being reported at Mustajärvi again. We see intercepts 12 to 20 meters on that property with very significant grades, kind of usually above 5 grams per ton. Here you see some of the better intercepts that were announced in January, February. Started off the year very well. We then secured an important permit that became the core of that Kolho property, which later attracted Agnico's attention. Very important permit being granted there. And then in the mid-year, we had started doing some drilling at the Sarvi property right next to Rupert. This was our second round of drilling. Got some exciting targets there. No significant or ore grade gold intercepts yet, but some good results coming out at Sarvi early days. And then again in the summer, Mustajärvi came through. Responding to sort of criticisms, how important is this a real discovery? We stepped out 230 meters or something, and we drilled a hole like this, 7 meters of almost 5 grams. Again, would have been good news in a reasonable market. And then, of course, late in the summer, we announced 59 grams in a trench over almost 7 meters, 80 meters off the bloody highway. So spectacular surface gold at Mustajärvi really got us excited. And yet the market, of course, just couldn't be bothered to get excited yet. But of course, we ended the year with some great news by bringing in an option into JV with Agnico on the Kolho property and their strategic investment in the company. So we look back on 2023 and feel pretty good, even though we were pretty beaten up in the market at that time.
Yeah, it was a tough market, but hey, we already have questions on what you're going to be doing at Mustajärvi this year and what Agnico might be doing at Kolho. So let's run with those. I'll let you run through this slide deck.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll answer those questions about Mustajärvi right now. So we're zooming into the center of the slide here to the Mustajärvi property. And this is what an emerging gold discovery starts to look like. In this case, however, there's a paved highway passing through the property, a power line just north, great infrastructure. And a major company did the first work here, and that was Outokumpu in the 90s. And they drilled a few holes here. In this area, they hit some nice intercepts, but they were all shallow, none deeper than 50 meters, about 12 holes. So we picked up the property very inexpensively in 2018, and we did some drilling here as well. Started to hit a little bit of gold, but we conducted some geophysics, and you'll notice the colored map is magnetics. The warm colors are mafic and ultramafic volcanic rocks. The cooler colors are sedimentary rocks. And we mapped out this fault zone called the Mustajärvi shear zone coming through the property like so. When we started exploring it, we hit some gold here. We realized there were flexures in this structure. And later we realized there were important crossing structures on this structure. So we did base of till sampling, the orange dots you see there. We saw a lot of gold anomalies here, some gold anomalies here, and a lot over here that we haven't really explained yet. And so the geologists pushed us out here 700 meters away, and we discovered what we call the northeast target with bonanza grade gold and visible gold in 2020, 2021. Again, we followed the structure out to the northeast, and we hit again the farthest east part of the property. We call it the east target. And that has turned up some spectacular results coming to surface. So over about a 5-year period, we progressed with limited budgets, and we've deployed about 15,800 meters of drilling total on this, sort of 1/10 of what they've probably drilled at Ickery. But in that, we've made a lot of progress. We know there's high grade here. We started to get predictive in 2022 and 2023 when the geologists figured out the structural controls on this gold, and we could sort of model it. And so I'm just going to slice it now along the structure and look at the subsurface in a long section. So here we see that central zone where the project was discovered. You can see some shallow holes that had some high grade. If it's purple, it's above 10 grams per ton. Had some nice intercepts there. We came 700 meters away, hit a little bit of gold over here, and then we hit bonanza grade at about 100, 150 meters below surface at the northeast target, and then another 700-meter jump out to the east, and you can see the system comes to the surface with a cluster of high grade. So now the geologists went to work figuring out what we have here, and what we realized is this zone sort of plunging off to the northeast. This zone, you can see the gold's telling you maybe to look back to the southwest in this direction. So we did a couple of big step outs last year, way over here to the southwest, and underneath and to the south here where we drilled a little bit deeper. You'll notice there's only 2 holes that hit 300 meters vertical below this property, so very little deep drilling. But the geologists began to piece this together. 2 styles of mineralization are hosting this gold. One is a vein system with quartz, carbonate, tourmaline, and pyrite, and sometimes visible gold. And that was dominant here in the northeast target. And another is a replacement style of mineralization, more of a bulk style, where we have quartz or silica, sericite, hematite, pyrite with gold. Those are larger volumes of mineralization, thicker intercepts, and that's dominant here at the east target, very important at the east target. So 2 styles of mineralization over 1.7 kilometers that we've been drilling here, that we've hit significant gold. We've had about 12 holes with about 100 gram meters or more, if we talk about grade thickness. One of them here is only 90, so we call it greater than 90 gram meters. But that's when we multiply the thickness of the intercept times the grade. Okay, and then we've drilled 5 holes, more than 200 gram meters. And then, as I mentioned last year over here, we cut a trench with 400 gram meters of grade thickness. So thicker and higher grade going together, better probability for success and economics over time. And so grade thickness is an important thing we track in the business. So that's what it looks like in long section. But clearly the east target was driving some enthusiasm. And so I'm just going to show you what these rocks look like, and we'll talk about some of these intercepts just briefly. So this was the northeast target where we hit that first hole with bonanza grade and visible gold here that had 1.4 meters of 94 grams. Hey, if you can mine a vein 1.5 meters wide and 100 grams, that's fine. We can make money that way. But then as we drilled a little more, we found a coalescing area where multiple veins have been brecciated, and we hit 16.5 meters of 7.7 grams. That looked a lot like this. There you see your pyrite. The black mineral is tourmaline, quartz, of course, and the milky mineral is calcite. And there's gold with that pretty consistently when you see that style of mineralization. However, at the east target, the rock looks like this very often, quite different. It's quite hard, meaning that this rock has been replaced with quartz or silica, silicified, we say. And in that, you'll notice there's pyrite, and it's flat here because it's in the foliations, which are following the bedding of the rock. So these were sedimentary rocks. It's been flooded with quartz and pyrite and gold, usually microscopic gold, but we have seen a bit of visible gold here. As it happens, that pyrite also contains a lot of cobalt. But at these sorts of gold grades, you don't really care that much about the cobalt, obviously. But so these begat more of these 10, 13, 15, up to 20 meter intercepts of higher grade bulk style mineralization. As you can see here, this really got us excited at the end of 2022, 14 meters of 29 grams from only 24 meters below surface. So high grade coming to surface in the east target. So now we just look at zooming in on that east target. What is this thing looking like? And this will probably tell you where we're going to go drill this year. If we zoom in on this east target and we show you the drill pattern here, here's that structure we were chasing, the northeast Mustajärvi shear zone. It's cut, however, by these northwesterly lines shown in green here. And there are more out in this area. There's also some more northeasterly trending faults here and probably in here. But what we've done is we show you the drill intercepts, and then we use the model from Leapfrog to just take gold intercepts above a gram and project that to surface so you can see a footprint of where the computer thinks there's going to be gold. So we stepped out a little bit in this area, and then we jumped 230 meters out here to drill this hole last year, and we hit that nice intercept with 7 meters of 4.7 grams, only 68 meters down hole. So there's some decent intercepts 200 meters away over here. We also came to the south. This thing, you remember, is plunging back to the southwest, but it's kind of dipping to the south. The plane of mineralization is looking down here. So we came over here, drilled these deeper holes in, and we hit zones down below. I'll show you in cross-section in a minute. So, but you can see the pattern, right? We have northeast elongation, probably offset by faults, and there's at least 2 of these trends here that you can expect us to be exploring along. And we've got little sniffs to the north, little sniffs further out to the northeast, but a lot more work to do to chase this high-grade core to see where this thing goes. And in cross-section, you can see what I'm talking about. So now these are the cross-sections we're looking at on the right-hand side. We're looking back to the west, comes to surface, as you can see. This is foliation, telling us to chase it to the southwest, but the rocks are faulted here. So we came down to the south and drilled and hit mineralization at depth. But there wasn't much data yet. So then we came further south and drilled these holes a little bit further to the west now. So now we're looking at another slice, and we can see things are a little deeper. And then here again, we can see a fault that we've now drilled through. And these holes hit the first high-grade mineralization at depth, also 200 to 250 meters deep, which we had not drilled that deep before. There's a mafic intrusive rock coming in here, and we have high grade and gold kind of hanging around that. You see lots of lower grade intercepts on this side, probably a near miss hole there. So we've got more drilling to do at depth and shallow surface, near surface here. And that's how we're going to be exploring Mustajärvi, is along this faulted corridor. But now we know there are really 2 zones here, and we can develop both of those as we continue to test it.
Do you do that at the same time? Sorry, Patrick, but do you explore at depth and then also near to surface, these 2 different zones at the same time, or are those different programs?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you asked that, because like a hole like this hits some shallow mineralization and it hits some deeper mineralization, Corey. So sometimes you can tag into both. But because this is further south, we tend to go around on the other side of the highway and drill from the south. But it was funny. We were showing these near surface results, and people would say, well, does it go to depth? Does it go to depth? And we're like, well, hang on. It's pretty good to have high grade mineralization at surface. So that's also more inexpensive to drill. So obviously we go around and we drill the deeper holes, Corey, to respond to that and to demonstrate that it does have continuation to depth. So yeah, it's the same program, Corey. You'd just be drilling geographically in a little bit. You'd be drilling a little bit more from over here. Whereas when you're drilling along the near surface target, you're going to be drilling up in here. Access is so good, it doesn't really matter. But yeah.
Okay. So you don't necessarily need to prioritize one over the other.
That's right. That's right. I will tell you this, though, talking about surface, we're certainly going to prioritize some more trenching, because this shows you there's a field here, and here's the highway. And what we did is we said, well, there's 6 or 7 meters of glacial cover here. To be clear, there's no outcrop. Mustajärvi does not outcrop. But 4, 5, 7 meters of glacial cover, just below that, we cut a trench. And it was really a test. This is a photo of the trench opening here with the geology colored in on top of it. And we cut that trench to see, is that stuff going to stand up so we can get down in there and safely sample it? Well, it did, and it does come to surface. And you can see here, we announced this intercept 6.87 meters of 59 grams average. But there are the individual assays in the bottom of the pit. 45.2, 72.5 grams, 52.8, low grade for Mustajärvi, 4 grams and 3 grams, but then 256, 10, 27.4 grams, and so on. We cut that trench in the clearing because it was easy to operate, and we didn't have to pay the surface landowner to knock down any trees. But clearly, we'll need to prospect back into the trees this way and probably along the strike this way. We will be cutting some more trenches this summer as well. 80 meters from the highway, a trench in 2023 that has 7 meters of 59 grams in a first-tier jurisdiction. Not that common around the world today. So this got people pretty excited, and we'll do some more trenching as well. And we may well pull a mini bulk sample. I just met with some metallurgists last week at a conference, and we'll probably look at taking a mini bulk sample out of here to start, thinking about more metallurgical testing on this near surface material. So clearly this corridor, to answer your question, Corey, runs along like so. You can see where the drill pattern is. We'll be drilling more holes here, but then we've also got these intercepts down here kind of underneath the highway to the south. So.
Yeah, fair enough. With those trench results, though, that's high grade. Is this a nuggety gold deposit, or what type of deposit could it be when you see this high of grade?
Great question. A pretty complicated answer. In general, when we compare our quality control duplicates from two different pieces of core, we find that the gold reproduces pretty nicely, meaning that most of it is probably fine gold. Okay. Now, as I showed you, there is visible gold. Every now and then we see a difference where we have coarser gold. It does appear visible gold is present here. In this oxidized interface where the very near surface might have been oxidized, it's kind of an orange gossainy color in that trench, indicating that the pyrite has been oxidized, at least for a few meters. That can make the gold a little more nuggety. And so clearly there will be some coarse gold here. We have seen it, Corey. And the old saying is, if you see any gold at all, be prepared to have coarse gold. So clearly you got to take big samples. You got to be careful about coarse gold sampling issues. And we run a rigorous quality control program, which has been audited by our geochemistry consultant, who was Newmont's former chief geochemist, by the way. So something to be careful of, Corey. But yeah, there is a lot of fine gold even in these high grades.
Okay, thank you.
So exploration, what comes next at Mustajärvi? And so what I'm just zoomed out here, here's where we were just looking. Apologize for the ugly map because it's just a work in progress. But what we're showing you is here's the original land position. We've now quadrupled it. We added a property here and property along here, these white outlines. So it's now about 3 or 4 times bigger than it was. B2 is our neighbor to the north. B2 and Orion. Rupert is our neighbor to the south over a lot of this area. So we've grabbed a bunch more ground, and this is magnetics. And what we've done here is showing you the Mustajärvi shear zone, and you don't have to be a geologist to say, hey, this structure looks kind of similar. There's magnetic high, magnetic low, magnetic high, magnetic low, and so on. This structure looks kind of similar. This structure looks kind of similar. These look a little different, but also kind of exciting in their own way. This is what we call a horsetail structure. We geologists, we don't have to come up with very creative names. It looks like a bloody horsetail, as you can see. And that horsetail structure is suggesting that over this numerous kilometers here, there's 2 kilometers, we see these parallel structures which need to be explored and have not been. Further, we're going to chase these structures down here because here's the really major whopping fault that comes through this part of the belt. And we have ground right there where these faults intersected. So you might ask yourself where we're going to go. Well, we're looking for these features, these later structures. They're called D3 or D4, meaning they're the 3rd or 4th deformation event in the belt. Those normally control the gold in this belt. We're using the magnetics. This is government data, so it's free. To map where the geology is. And then we get out and we do our own till sampling and other prospecting. We've just finished a detailed ground magnetic survey we conducted ourselves across these 2 blocks. And this is the sausage making. This is how we explorers decide where we're going to drill. I'll just bring in a map. It's a little ugly, but I've zoomed in on the core Mustajärvi property here, plus the new property to the southwest and the new property to the east. The black heavy lines are the geologist's first pass at where we're going to try to drill this year. And so what we've done is we've consulted with our advisors. We talked to our partners like Agnico. We talked to Rich Goldfarb and myself, and we collaborate, and the geologists spew out a bunch of data, and we nominate areas we want to drill. And this is what we do sort of before we start drilling, and we get an idea of the budget required. So, 20 holes, nominal are on this map. A lot of them are focused around that east target high grade, as you can see. Maybe 70% of it will be in that area, but you can see we're starting to step out to the south and along strike. We're also looking at tying in this pod to the northeast target, and then maybe tying in the northeast target to the central target, and so on. And then looking to continue into this area here, and also maybe even getting the first holes into this brand new area to the southwest. So we're looking at a year that should have something like 3,000 to 4,000 meters of drilling, it's a bad year. If the market is still soft and if we can't get a more substantial financing, you can't spend money you don't have. We have no debt in FireFox. So we'll drill 3,000 to 4,000 meters at least at Mustajärvi. We'll use the magnetics and IP geophysics to target in on some of these areas and to see where we think the known mineralization extends. We use a lot of structural geology, and we'll be doing things like base of till sampling here and here in the new areas. And that's in the budget as well. So you sort of adapt based on the market and based on the budget. Importantly, these targets have gotten people pretty excited because we know we've got a mineralized structure over kilometers here. We've got 3.5 kilometers of this structure, and we've got a lot more work to do on it. We know high grade comes to surface here, though, and if you're a junior, that gets a lot of your attention. High grade that you can advance quickly and impress upon the market the potential significance of the discovery. But meanwhile, you have to keep testing the early targets as well. You keep a pipeline continuously. So that's where we'll be efforting at Mustajärvi for the remainder of this year, more or less.
Patrick, just a couple of questions on this one, because this is a lot of questions that have come in. Then with 19 holes, you're doing a lot here, but the balance being expanding on mineralization that you have already hit, but then the tying together potentially of these different areas where you already have drilled. How do you allocate 19 holes then to expand, step outside of all this drilling, but then also tie that together? How many holes do you allocate to each of those?
Well, we've itemized it here to 19 or 20 holes, as I said. What happens next is iterative. Carl and the team, basically, we know how much money we've got in the bank when we're out there drilling. And so does this hole, for instance, does it go deep or does it get cut off early? So you change your meterage based on results. And we're always going to have that kind of freedom. By the way, I think that's a benefit of having everybody in the same time zone and also not having 6 layers of vice presidents to get through before you can authorize your next steps in a program. So we're very flat structure. So it will be dynamic. And if these results were to be particularly good, or we were to get a curveball here and see mineralization doing something we didn't expect, then you would change the layout a little bit. But it's a good point, Corey, in the sense that in an area where you know you've got high grade and you've got an emerging resource, an emerging discovery, it makes sense to weight the program towards that. But we know there's high-grade gold here. We need to see where it goes. We know there's high-grade gold here and here. We need to be checking the area in between them. And then we have a setting right here that we just absolutely needs to be drilled because it looks a lot like the setting up here. So it is iterative. It's trial and error. And don't know if I can answer your question to your satisfaction, except to say that the meterage will definitely change. And when good results come, as you know, in a junior company, news can get out quickly, and we can work year-round at Mustajärvi. So we can drill more in the winter or more in the summer or both, depending on the results we get. So it has to be dynamic. It's not boring to manage a program like this, Corey.
No, that answers it well. You can test it all, it sounds like, with these holes because they're not, let's say, so defined that you wouldn't move off that plan. Let's also talk about that part just down a little bit to the south there where that major fault structure is. You just alluded to it a little bit that you'll be doing some early work there. Has there been any other past exploration along that major fault where some of these splays are?
It's a great question. This is called the Venäjälki shear zone. The Venäjälki shear is parallel to the one I mentioned earlier called the Serka shear to our north. It shows on the regional map. These are what we call crustal scale structures, which means they show up in large scale maps going deep, kilometers deep in the crust. Those are major structures that not only define geological boundaries, but they shatter the rock. And what probably happened is the Mustajärvi is probably a splay related to the Venäjälki, okay? And so where they might converge, like area down here, you will have rocks that are very much shattered, deformed in a big way, and maybe fluid flow will occur along them, and there may be more gold. It's not always that simple. In this case, this structure with a minor fault crossing it has tended to control where the high grade is. So there could be hundreds of minor faults on here we can't map at this scale yet, Corey. So that's why we go out and do our own ground magnetics. We collect the data ourselves on skis in the winter and on foot in the summer, and we map with magnetics. And you can see the fabrics in here. And non-geologists are going to be able to draw lines on this map. And you know what? You're going to be right a lot of the time. Where you see a linear, there is probably a fault or a crack in the Earth's crust. So you can see the beginnings of some of these down here and why we might like this feature, and you can clearly see where the big fault comes through here. To answer your question, very little work has been done. This is a protected territory, which is why we're not exploring on it. You can, but it's much slower. And so there is a gold prospect out in the middle of that protected swamp, which is an area you can explore on, but we choose not to do it because it's so much slower and more expensive. But that is about the only significant work that's been done in this part of the world. There's been a little bit of till sampling over here and over here in the regional data set. That prospect is in the regional data set. So to answer your question, very little work has been done on it. And on our claims, just a little bit of till sampling down here has generated a few anomalies down here that we now need to follow up on. So it's early days on these other big structures, Corey. And as I said, even though there's a protected area here, Rupert and others have come into the south and on all sides of this area. So everybody knows there's a prospective system in here to be explored.
Very interesting. You're really building up a pipeline of targets. You have targets right now, but there could be many more targets that come out of this year's work.
Yeah, that's my dilemma. Got 20 million you want to invest?
If I did, I would give you some. I've enjoyed this presentation so far.
Yeah. So we're going to jump now. This will be quick. This is the Jeesiö property, about 20 kilometers to the southeast. You'll notice a 2-kilometer scale bar. It's a lot bigger property. Okay. Many of you will remember the Orion boulder discovery called Risti back in 2017. That's when we founded the company. Right after they did that work, we had put the company together during that spring. There's where their boulder discovery was. There's that Serka shear zone. You'll notice it flexes right through our property. Orion to the northwest, Orion to the southeast of us. And this is where they've just optioned a portion of their property to Kinross right here up to this border. So this is our Jeesiö project with multiple permits within it. And just a couple things. We've done some till sampling work up here. This is all a big swamp. Recurring theme. Every time you see one of these big faults, there's often a swamp there. That's where the Rupert Hickory discovery is, in a big swamp, okay? Means no outcrop. So in the south, however, there is outcrop, and you can see these are grams per ton gold. So we had a cluster of good results down here a few years ago, an area we thought that was metasedimentary rocks with some maybe mafic rocks down there. We went to the south. This is a zoom in there. There's some of those rock chip results. And we drilled a couple of holes right off the highway, by the way, very comfortable access next to a highway right here. And those holes, nobody cared, but we drilled a couple of narrow intercepts of +3 gram mineralization, 20 meters below surface or something. And then we began prospecting more up this corridor where all these faults are interpreted. You'll notice 1.4, 2.6, 6.3. There's a 10 grammer in there we forgot to label. There's a 33 gram rock chip sample here. And for 4 kilometers from up here down to here, there's been no drilling. So we've just gotten out and completed a ground magnetics survey here to help map these structures again. So you have intersecting structures, common theme, big faults, intersecting structures. We've got gold there. So this property, no barriers at all to work. There's a highway here. It takes about 9 minutes, I think, to get to the entrance to this property from our field office. So great access again. And our neighbor, Kinross, we ran into their geos in the field doing our ground magnetics last week or week before. So an area that you will see us advancing is called Jeesiö, the Katiavara prospect at Jeesiö. We'll see drilling later in 2024. We're super excited about it. Grade coming to surface and a nice several kilometers with anomalous gold there with no drilling at all in this part. Early stage property, of course, but in a great area. Now we're going back to those northern properties where we're going to finish talking about Sarvi and Kolho. Here's the Hickory discovery to get you oriented, and here's Mustajärvi to get you oriented. Now, those other properties you mentioned early on, Corey, with your keen eye, there sits Naula, which we've done some geophysics on. We flew our own airborne magnetic survey there, have some beautiful targets there. Nunara sits right on the Serka shear. Again, some interesting gold gold anomalies in that area. Monto is right up next to Agnico's ground in the north near the Kittilä mine. So we're just going to talk about these more advanced projects as we close up. Sarvi, big property right next to Ikkari, right there. So there's Sarvi. We've zoomed in now. Here again is the Ikkari outline of the resource. This is the Helmi discovery, not nearly as strong, obviously, as Ikkari, but B2 and Orion have drilled some good holes in here. You'll notice it's on a continuation of a structure here that occurs at Ikkari. So again, this is geologists drawing lines. And I just want to say, we acquired this property a couple of years before the Ikkari discovery, but the permitting timeline was so long, we pegged it, but didn't get it until after the discovery. We finally got it granted, and it was based on these interpreted northeasterly structures and northwesterly structures that our geologists like. So we picked up the block. Rupert has 8 kilometers of property boundary with us here. The Ikkari deposit is about 5 kilometers south of the property line. Haina Central, where they've been drilling gold and copper, is about 2.5 kilometers. And I think this is Haina North, or that's Haina North. And you're within a kilometer and a half of our property boundary. But look at the setting. There's an east-west structure with cross-cutting northwesterlies, cross-cutting northwesterlies or northeasterlies with an east-west structure. There's Haina Central, Haina North, east-west structure with these cross-cutting structures. Plumbing, right? The rocks are broken, fluids are moving along these faults. So probably that's why the Rupert guys acquired this ground, this structural setting. You come here to the north, we have this east-west structure, cross-cutting structures, and more cross-cutting structures out here to the west. Initially, we flew our own airborne magnetics. We did a minor amount of till sampling, very little outcrop. We're part of the same big swamp with Ikkari right here. The swamp comes up to about here where the power line right of way. This is a power line right of way cutting through the property. That's about when the high ground starts up in here. And one rock chip sample, 1.5 grams, almost 2% copper. It's one of the very few outcrops over this whole area, and it's mineralized. So we did do a little bit of drilling here, widely spaced. This is 8 kilometers across here. You can see we drilled a few holes. One hole got 20 meters of low-grade gold, like 0.2 grams or something like that, some silver, some multi-element work. Over here, more multi-element anomalies, really good till anomalies. The yellow dots are till anomalies out in here that have not been tested. The widely spaced drilling has not produced economic grade or width yet, but we just got to get in here and persist because that's how these discoveries are made. It took about 16,000 base of till samples to make the Ikkari discovery, drilling through the glacial sediments in the swamp, sampling the bedrock. We've got about 1,600 so far. They would be well over 20,000 down to the south. So we've got to do way more till sampling. We've done no work on the west end. This was the last permit to get granted. And yet the Geological Survey of Finland drilled these 2 holes years ago, and they hit some narrow 3.5 gram gold here. We've done no work there. So we'll be pushing our exploration to the west. We'll be continuing the base of till sampling and probably some geophysics. And frankly, if you look at this property, 8 kilometers of property boundary right next to a 5 million ounce gold discovery and growing. The real estate value alone of Sarvi is probably more than our market cap. So we will obviously be holding on to 100% ownership of Sarvi and continuing to advance it as we go forward here. So you will see some work at Sarvi, and we're going to do more sampling and especially work out here to the west.
Do you think you could be drilling it later on this year, or would that be a next year type of thing?
No, we can drill. The swamp needs to freeze up. So we didn't drill there this winter because we went into the winter negotiating with Agnico and we weren't sure what the situation was going to be. But you need this area to freeze up because you like to be out on the snow and ice. The north, though, we can drill in the summer, Corey. So the answer is if one of these targets were to take off and get some momentum, we could have a drill out here in the fall. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we'll close up here talking about, again, how exciting the Ikkari corridor is. So we've zoomed back a little bit. There's Ikkari. There's the Rupert land position outlined in green. Here's our Sarvi property. And then here is the giant Kolho property. It's a great story. We saw that the structure that comes through Ikkari, and this is magnetics again, government data. You can see this magnetically active area comes out to the east, turns to the north, bends around this big granite right here. By the way, that's something you see in Canada a lot, these structures bending around granites. And we realized that structure is prospective. This is all a big swamp, though, the same swamp that continues back to Hickory. So we pegged it all. We put in our applications on 6 permits here, 120 square kilometers, 23 kilometers of this structure that we have pegged. I think Agnico was the 4th company to approach us about optioning this property. And you know, we got this first permit granted. These others are applications. They will be granted. It's the most transparent, wonderful mining law in the world. You absolutely will get them, but we don't have them granted yet. But we do have this one granted. And so we did the deal with Agnico because we realized this is a major property. And frankly, the dilution and the time required to explore and conduct the thousands of base of till samples required, the many miles or kilometers of geophysical traverses that are going to be required to work through that overburden, and then to be drilling, you know, through that glacial overburden for years. We strongly believe this is a district scale play that will lead to multiple million-ounce plus discoveries in this belt. And we think this is one of the best places to go for one. However, that major project probably requires a major partner. And that's the deal we cut with Agnico. They will spend $5 million to get their first 51%, $5 million US, of which $2 million is committed. They've already gotten busy this winter. Of course, we can't report or comment on what Agnico's doing on their own, but they have been exploring this winter. And of course, we provide some assistance there. We have geologists and a field office in this part of the country, and they don't. So we do cooperate with them, and sometimes they can contract our geologists to conduct some of that work. But they have been exploring this winter, and there will be regular reports about their progress. But consider this a long-term play and a district scale play at Kolho. All the better probably to have the bigger checkbook and aggressiveness of a major company hitting it. Now think strategically. Rupert is here, of which Agnico owns over 10%. We, FireFox, Agnico owns 11% on an issued and outstanding basis. So this is potentially a camp scale play coming together for those of us who are partnered with Agnico in this part of the world.
Oh, I think we're seeing Agnico's strategy in this area by partnering up with all of you. But just for clarification, because we did have some questions, when will Agnico start work at this project? They've already started then.
Correct. Okay. They have started. Yeah.
Okay. Now, will you be able to press release any of their results, any of their exploration, or is this something that we depend on Agnico for?
Oh, it's a little bit of both. Those of you, obviously, if anything is material to FireFox, we will be compelled to release it. One can argue that an earn-in stage is not really material until you get to the point of the partner earning in. That would be something that is definitely material. At this point, you know, we are the beneficial owner of those tenements. They have not earned in yet. However, as any of you who've been following junior company, major company deals, or have worked in junior companies, you know, there's kind of a bit of a battle. The juniors want to talk more, the majors don't. So we'll strike that. We have a great relationship with the technical team there, and we'll strike that balance. There will be news flow, I'm certain, from Kolho, but of course, Agnico will control the confidentiality of information and that kind of stuff, as they should do, because they've got to go explore that property. So there'll be disclosures. Anything material to FireFox, of course, will be released.
Okay, thank you.
So just wrapping up with a timeline, as I've explained, a lot of work to do at Mustajärvi. For me, I'm most excited about the first metallurgical test work, which we're just getting underway with. As I said, I had some meetings last week with some providers. Trenching will be super exciting, a bit more sampling on those new areas, and definitely planning for drilling later in the year. Jeesiö, the second property we discussed, as I mentioned, we just completed a very important ground magnetic survey, which really shows how exciting some of those targets are. We'll put a news release out about that, and we'll be prospecting. A lot of that, by the way, is high ground. I plan to put my boots on that ground again this summer as well at Jeesiö. So we are aiming to have drilling later in the year there, and there should be no reason that we won't, but we're not certain of that. And then Sarvi, of course, the one right next to Rupert, big property, more work to do on designing the rest of the sampling program. And for right now, we don't expect to be drilling there until hopefully in the winter when the swamp freezes up. So at least 3 properties will see activity. And that's sort of, you know, market and therefore financing and budget dependent. More work will accelerate this. And the nice thing is, We can work year-round at Mustajärvi and Jeesiö for certain. We do have long-term access to a drill, at least one drill. Some companies have a real problem getting drilling access in Finland because there just aren't very many drills, and it's a very active part of the world. So wrapping up, we're nimble, we're tenacious. We survived, the last couple of years, and not only that, but we brought on board an important cornerstone investor. We've got money being invested, through that option agreement on Kolho, advancing our chances to be part of a major discovery, while we ourselves have been drilling high-grade gold. We kept our team together, and frankly, when you look at a market like this, have faith. Those of you who are as unhappy as we are with the sort of price of mining equities. The key is, tenements, team, and access to drills. And we kept all of the above in place in FireFox through what was a pretty tough couple of years. And with these gold prices, we're quite certain that the demand for the gold that we're all exploring for will drive us into a good place. And you'll see a lot of work and a lot of disclosures coming from us this year.
Okay. Patrick, thank you very much. That really walked us through this well. That was a good presentation. It addressed a lot of the questions that came in, but there are a couple other kind of random questions that we can talk to here. One being drilling costs. What are your drill costs approximately?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And actually, it's a fascinating part of Finland. Actually quite low, given that we're in the Arctic. I believe we're looking at $330 Canadian a meter, something like that. And that's pretty well all up, except for geologist costs, of course. So that's very reasonable. For those of you who are familiar with Nevada, for instance, it's a fraction of what we pay in Nevada to drill core. These are high quality core rigs. There are virtually no RC rigs. I think no RC rigs in Finland is an accurate statement. So everything you're going to see here is core. And you might ask, well, why are they so low? Well, there's two reasons for that. One is infrastructure access. It's just an easy place to work. You don't have to sling the rig in by helicopter or anything like that. But the other is, I believe it's part of a strategy by the drilling companies themselves. There are two big Finnish drilling companies, one of whom is a shareholder of FireFox called Kati. And it's our view that the costs there are kept fairly low so that it isn't that attractive for international drillers to try to get in there and compete. So you don't have, for instance, Major Drilling or another large company here trying to compete. So therefore, you've only got on the order of 34, 35 rigs in the country. And with Anglo-American having a big nickel discovery and companies like Agnico and Rupert using up a lot of rigs, it's hard to get a rig. So that one reason are fewer drills, we believe, is the costs are fairly low. It's good in the sense that it's deliverable, it's efficient, it's budgetable. We know what it's going to cost us to drill. And by the way, the team executes to that very well. We know what it's going to cost us to drill very well. And the drillers are incredibly productive, but pretty low drilling costs, all things considered.
Yeah, those are low drilling costs, but hey, that's a win for companies and shareholders too. Slide 16, you outlined some new ground that was added. We've seen some regional maps where your land package, your portfolio is spread out across this area. Any other ground, any other projects that you might tack on to current projects or simply add projects to the portfolio?
Look, it's very dynamic. I could give you a whole nother presentation on the Finnish mining law, but suffice to say it's expensive to hold ground in exploration permit form, about 20 euros per hectare. Comparable, by the way, to the Western U.S., which is about $16 per acre. So do your metric conversion there or whatever. But the point is, it's expensive to hold ground, and that's by design. So the idea is that ground turns over. And we have an incredible team. They are nimble and fast. And our CEO and exploration manager are in the same country, in the same time zone. So the decision is like that. It's map staking on the computer. So when ground comes open, you can simply grab it with your bloody credit card, peg it, okay? And then the application process isn't expensive. It's only expensive once it's granted as a permit. So that is a roundabout way of saying land turns over by design, and one needs to be tracking areas of interest continuously. We have a reputation for being very quick to grab open land that we want, i.e. that big Kolho property that we picked up before anybody else could. So yes, we will be adding properties, evaluating continuously, looking for openings around our existing projects or whole new target areas. It's part of the game. We're very good at it. And you can do it in English, by the way, on the website. But I think the Finns probably have a little advantage. So it's good that our whole team is Finnish.
Hey, you don't want everyone just bidding on this land here, Patrick. Don't make it sound too easy, okay?
Yeah.
Now, another quick question. When it comes to some of the drill results from that eastern target, or really any of the drill results, how do these compare to the early on results at Rupert's Ickery discovery?
Great question. Look, when we first hit the bonanza grade, obviously a meter and a half of 100 grams is good enough to mine anywhere in the world if you've got enough of it. So clearly you're excited about that. But we were looking at the host rocks at that time. What kind of rocks are these versus what kind of rocks are they drilling at Ickery? And I, being a geologist, was thinking, well, I want to find a little more reactive host rock where the volume of mineralization goes up, but of course the grade would be lower, but still great. And when Rupert drilled an intercept, and I might misquote a little bit, but it was around 100 meters of 8 grams. That's a game changer, right? Because you now have a continuous interval that's mineralized at, underground mining grades. I mean, that's a great grade to have over 100 meters, an 800 gram meter hole. Now, our trench is 400 gram meters, so that's great as well. But we haven't hit a drill hole that good yet. It has to do with the wall rocks probably, and also preparation. Have we hit the best part of the zone where the rocks are the most mineralized over the greatest volume of rock? That is the type of host rock, the structural environment, and so forth, the traps, so-called, that attract the gold there. So to answer your question, I would say that there are a few of our holes, these intercepts with 13, 15, 20 meters of really good grade, that are a good start on a multi-million ounce discovery like Ickery had. But what we haven't been able to do yet is prove that it's that continuous and that thick and that rich over that distance. But here's what I would say to you. Consider that we are 40 kilometers by paved highway from Agnico's mill. And that mill is running a sulfide ore deposit, and we have pyrite associated with our gold, and we have mineralization coming to surface. And so certainly we are looking for multi-million ounce gold deposits, but it may well be that several 100,000 ounces of high grade would be economic here. Obviously 1 or 2 million ounces would be potentially economic here. So we don't know yet even if the east target is the best part of the Mustajärvi system, or if it's deeper, or if it's along strike, or if it's on some of this new property. That's what exploration is all about. However, we got a very good start, and when we kicked in to those 15 to 20 meter intercepts, I perked up and the market perked up, I think on purpose, because that means that it's a scale of mineralization that has a higher likelihood to be able to be bulk mined. But certainly we have not ripped into a hole as good as that 100 meters of 8 grams that our friends at Rupert drilled. And of course, our market cap is, 12 million instead of 800 million. So there is that.
Yeah, that's an amazing hole. But you have had some good drill results there. I know it's way too early to even talk about this year, probably even next year, but there are a couple people wondering what the roadmap is to issue a maiden resource estimate just at Mustajärvi. What will that take?
Next time we're together at a conference, I hope I see some of you folks and we can have beers or wine together and talk about that, because you have to wonder, what's the best use of our limited dollars, right? If it becomes apparent through multiple, beads on a string, for instance, that Mustajärvi has gold there that's going to add up over time, one has to debate, when do you want to do the drill out to make it a resource, and whether you even want to do that. If it becomes apparent that deposit there will form a resource and be ultimately developed by somebody, then there's a value there that you may be able to create a lot of value for FireFox shareholders without diluting to drill, holes on 25 or 50 meter spacings. So that's a long way of saying the board's made no such decision to do a grid drill out of the east target or any of Mustajärvi yet. And there are a number of successful cases, such as Eleanor, when the guys at Virginia discovered that, they never put a resource out and they sold the company for $500 million. One of the things we've done with our recent addition to the board is we put a lawyer on the team, partly to make sure that our company is structured properly, such that maybe we could do an asset level deal on one property and keep going on 5 others, so we are keeping all our options open. And I actually do want to hear from our shareholders about that sort of thing. But to answer your question, you could delineate a resource on something like this in fairly short order. And you're right, Corey, it's certainly not for this year, but if we were to set our minds to it and the geology cooperated, of course, you could see a resource in 12 to 18 months with a committed effort when you can drill year round on a property for sure, like this. But I would also say that the reason you see us both focusing and also stepping out is because we want to get an idea of scale before we commit to that kind of drill out and to make sure we're in the best part of the system. So I'm not dodging the question. We are not right now, the board has not authorized us to raise money with the effort, with the plans to put in a grid drill program to make this thing a resource. However, it has a way of creeping up on you when you hit a great mineral deposit. And if we keep ripping into these high-grade holes with good continuous blocks of mineralization, we'll begin to see it take shape, I would say, into next year.
Hey, I'm with your board, though, Patrick, especially in this market. Resources just aren't getting the value. It's more about exploration. And it's more about showing blue sky. So, yeah, if I were you as well, don't rush into a resource. Keep drilling, keep exploring on all parts of the project and on all the projects, too. Final question, then. What is the cash on hand? How do you go about funding the exploration, continued exploration for this project?
Yeah, no surprise. Cash on hand's pretty low. It's under $500,000 Canadian. And we will need to raise money to support most of the program that you saw there. And so we are happy to do it in a good gold price environment, we hope, expect. And we'll be out there having to raise money for sure. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to say we can do this work without funding. So we do have a need for cash. So be cognizant of that. However, I got to say the cornerstone investors, Crescat Capital has supported us, and they had a participation right to maintain their equity level, as we disclosed in the December financing that they joined with Agnico. So with those sorts of cornerstone investors and ongoing support that has been there even through these tough markets, we're very confident we'll have a robust program this year. And as you can see, we can scale it up if the market is there and we have the ability to raise more funds. But we tend to raise judiciously and not to dilute too much at lower prices so that we fund a program. And as we said, with reasonable drilling costs, it's amazing what we've been able to do for $2 or $3 million at a time. But mind you, would love if it was more, but we are cognizant of the dilution that comes at these low prices. So we'll raise money judiciously in the context of the market, and we'll keep folks posted. And the best thing about it is we crank the news out when we raise the money. People can't say we don't communicate. So I hope to be talking to many of you with good results later this year.
All right. Hey, Patrick, thank you so much for taking time walking us through the story. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for all the questions. If you have any follow-up questions, you can reach out to any of the contact information on this final slide or email me directly, fleck@kereport.com. I'll follow up with Patrick as some more news breaks and to get any of your questions addressed. So, Patrick, again, thank you for your time, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, everyone.